Okay, so here's what you need to know about the age-checked internet that just arrived to the UK and what you can do about it, including which VPNs you can use in order to avoid all of that. This is the Online Safety Act. I believe it was still being talked about back in 2023, and now the effective date has finally come, which is July 25th of 2025. So the goal is to supposedly prevent minors from accessing harmful content like adult content, self-harm content, and preventing eating disorders as well. And this is enforced by Ofcom, which is the UK communications regulator. And there are penalties for non-compliant sites. So most sites will have to comply. Otherwise, they will be fined up to £18 million or 10% of their global turnover. So most websites are going to comply in order to avoid paying such a fee. Now, what you can do about it, obviously, you can use a VPN. You'll see that most people all over the internet, including on Reddit, this applies to Reddit, by the way, and Twitter. So you will need to be age and identity checked before you log into those websites as well. Now, what can they do with this kind of information? Well, this is where most people are worried about. So they're getting your ID just so that you can sign into things like Reddit, X, and other adult content. And this can be worrying, especially if you've been following some news here and there. In some places, the police can actually storm your house for putting out a tweet or a post that the government may not really agree with. Now, you'll see that people are already interested in avoiding all of that. You know, I love using a VPN to dodge my government's repressive internet policies. And if you're basically trying to avoid any government surveillance or any more data collection, I mean, the government's got plenty of data on everybody already, but giving them access to even more data is just not a good idea. And most people agree. So if you don't want to give the government any more information, including facial age estimation, so they'll have AI scanning your face from a photo to estimate your age. There's MNO age checks, which is mobile operators confirming your age via the mobile operators account. And there's also credit card checks. And this is viable because cards can only be issued to 18 plus, making this a reliable method. And there's also email-based age estimation, ID uploads or selfie plus ID comparison. So there's lots of information that you need to give out in order to access websites on the internet. Now, again, kids and protection of kids is what's being used. This is basically the government's excuse to force everybody to hand over their IDs and information and personal information and online habits and whatnot. And this obviously at this point applies in the UK. Now again, because of privacy concerns and people worrying about data collection, people are reverting to using VPNs. So what you want to do essentially is download a reliable VPN that is able to give you access to websites without forcing you to hand over information. So for example, I was just connected to the UK server. If I go ahead and connect to the UK server, obviously I'm gonna blur all kinds of words that I don't want to show in this video. But let me just go ahead and demonstrate this. I'll launch a new page here. And if I wanted to access some kind of site, it could be a specific forum or social media site. And that also applies to adult sites. So if I were to try to access this spicy website right here, you'll notice that it will ask me to provide age verification. And if I click check my age, it's going to ask me to sign up using my personal information. And that's where the government can collect all kinds of internet habits and information on me. And so in order to avoid that, obviously, I'm not going to show you that this works. You already know that this works. This only applies in the UK, and I'm not going to demonstrate any further. But essentially, all you really need to do is use a reliable VPN in this case, I'm just going to demonstrate using ExpressVPN. That's what I use on the daily because I just prefer it. It's very reliable. And I'll link you guys a discount if you're interested in getting Express. There's also a couple of other VPNs that work really well, but I'll talk about them a little bit later on. Essentially, what you want to do is just connect to a VPN, and you have to choose a country where none of these apply. So it just could be the United States, right? You can connect to a states. You can probably just connect to any random location, and it won't have these surveillance-based age checking requirements like the ones you're getting when you're in the UK. So to avoid handing over all that information, just connect to any location using a reliable VPN, a VPN that actually promises to not hand over your data to advertisers or governments, and that's why I like to use Express again. In fact, the reason I like to use Express and the reason I trust it is because even in 2017, when the Turkish government seized an ExpressVPN server, they were still unable to extract any information out of the server thanks to the true no-logs policy. And most VPNs, you'll see they'll try to claim a no-logs policy and whatnot, but they end up handing over your information. Once you look into their privacy policy a little bit more, you'll see that it's all just not really true and they are collecting information. Whereas with ExpressVPN, there's plenty of independent audit reports that prove that they indeed do not collect any information besides this Turkish incident, which is a real-life example, you could say. So again, once you're connected to any location that's not the UK, you can just go to what is my IP. I just want to prove that my internet now thinks that I'm in the United States. And so if I went to any site, whether it's X, Reddit, any kind of social media that the government decides to censor for whatever reason they claim, I can just avoid that by using a VPN. So, as far as I'm concerned, it seems like we're moving more and more into this surveilled internet, and I'm pretty sure nobody's happy about that. There's always these so-called good reasons that governments try to use and leverage against people, like protecting kids. Obviously, we all want to protect kids. There are solutions to protecting kids, and they don't involve handing over our information to the government in order to protect the kids. There are plenty of ways to protect your kids from adult content, and that involves controlling your router. So at home, if you want to protect your kids, you can actually, get services like Aura, or I think there's a bunch of other services. I'll link some in the description below if you're interested in them. But basically, you can censor your own internet by controlling your own router. And this way, if you have kids in the house, the moment they connect to the Wi-Fi, they're not able to access any of these adult sites. And that way, you're protecting your children without necessarily handing over all of your information to the government and just IDing yourself every time you want to access the internet. It doesn't make any sense. I think VPN use will continue to grow as governments become more and more surveillance based, and it's definitely bad news for everybody in the UK at the moment. But the good news is you can avoid it using a VPN, somewhat at least cares about your information. Because again, aren't I handing over my information and data and ID to the VPN itself? Well, that is true, but if the VPN is audited and provides proof that it doesn't collect your information, well, that's just gonna be a whole lot better than handing over your identification every time you want to access a website that the government deems dangerous, right? So God knows what they will deem as dangerous in the future. It's really just up to them, and I think it's all bollocks in my opinion. So again, if you want to protect yourself and gain your freedom back, at least if you're in the UK, this is what you can do using a VPN. So I've demonstrated this again using ExpressVPN. There's also other VPNs. There's things like NordVPN. There's Surfshark. It can be a little confusing as to which one could be the best choice. You can go with ExpressVPN if you're looking for something that is just incredibly easy to use and super reliable and super secure. It's my go-to VPN. It connects incredibly quickly thanks to the protocol that they use. and there's just nothing complicated about it. In fact, with ExpressVPN, there's this really cool feature that automatically blocks adult sites. It just gives it to you in ExpressVPN. All you have to do is tick the box. You have to make sure that your VPN is turned off first, though. You can even block ads and whatnot. So very easy solution without having to access your router, or if you're maybe not tech savvy and you just want to make sure you're good to go as soon as you get the application. This is one way of blocking adult sites very easily. Let's say you want to make sure these sites are blocked on your router so that anybody connected to that router will not be able to access adult sites. And this is just assuming, let's say maybe you don't want your kids to have access to ExpressVPN and you don't want to download it on their device. What you can do is get an AirCove router, which has ExpressVPN pre-installed on it, and you can just log into the router's interface, which is very similar to this. It's incredibly easy to use. Go ahead and click the block adult sites, and you don't have to do anything else besides that. It's super easy. So that's one of the reasons why I like to use Express and personally recommend it, because it's incredibly easy to use. Now, NordVPN is a great option if you're interested in something that just gives you a little bit more features here and there, especially if you want extra features like threat protection, for example, which acts like a little bit of a mini antivirus. And there's other features like file transfer, which makes it incredibly easy to share files with anyone else that has NordVPN's app installed on their device. And it's securely sharing information, essentially. So this is a very effective way of doing it. And it has 165 countries, which is basically the biggest number of countries I've ever seen in any other VPN feature. So that's a huge plus if that's what you're looking for, as opposed to ExpressVPN's 105 countries. Now, Surfshark has 100 countries, but what's cool about Surfshark is that it allows you to secure an unlimited number of devices with just a single subscription, unlike ExpressVPN's 8 devices and NordVPN's 10 devices. So if that's something that you're looking for, then by all means, go ahead and get Surfshark. It's definitely the best budget option that gets the job done at the cheapest possible cost without sacrificing any security, any privacy, or performance for that matter. Granted, Surfshark is a little slower than Express and Nord, but you gotta forgive it for that since it's a little bit cheaper. So, you know, you get what you pay for at the end of the day. So these would be my recommendations for the best VPNs if you're interested in bypassing the new UK age verification law, which again is not something that anybody is happy about. So that'll be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.